Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
In Finding the Feds Missing Children, Child Trafficking in America by Muckraker.com, Anthony Rubin reports that since 2021, about 400 children a day are smuggled into the United States, processed by the federal government, and released into the country.
On August 19, 2024, the Department of Homeland Security announced that they had lost track of over 300,000 of these children. In June of 2024, a government insider from the Department of Health and Human Services provided Muckraker with a list detailing the names of over 8,000 alien children, along with their last known addresses. So, we began an operation to find the missing children ourselves.
Carlos Arellano used to work for the NGOs, delivering these children throughout the United States.
I spent over 2 decades working for NGOs, and to be more specific, I spent about 7 years escorting children around the country, delivering them from point A to point B. One of the things that I used to do was I used to move kids in the middle of the night in private airfields, private charter planes. We had countless of kids, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds tell us that, oh, they woke us up at 3 a.m. and they took us to a private airfield where the entire plane was full of kids. And I asked them over and over again, did you see other adults on this plane, or were all the seats just children? And they would say the entire plane, every single seat was a child on it. And then they spoke on how they would land in New York and get on charter buses. And then when their sponsor finally picked them up, they picked them up at a park, at a public park in the middle of the night. And I would get confirmation from the sponsor as well. What time did you pick your child up? Did you pick them up at the airport or at the park? And they confirmed that as well. It was at 3 a.m. in the park. And these kids, all of them told stories about how they had little friends that they lost touch with, they never heard from again. We had a lot of kids in the New York area with their sponsors where I asked them, hey, did you go through any fingerprints? Did you go through any type of background to get this child? They said no fingerprints, no background. All I did was sign a piece of paper and they gave the kid to me. And then they turned around and gave the kid away 2 days later. The youngest child I moved was 3 months old. When I moved that 3-month-old, I wasn't given formula, I wasn't given diapers because supposedly I was supposed to land where I was going to drop this child off at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I ended up dropping the child off at 2 a.m. And one of the biggest issues we ran into on this trip was that a lot of these so-called sponsors were telling us, oh, we gave the child away the moment it got here. We gave it away after a day, or we gave it away after 2 days. And after they tell us, oh, well, they gave it away, there's no way to find this child anymore. It's a dead end. Those kids are lost forever, never going to find them again.
In their search, Muckraker.com found that these young children were officially living in dilapidated, vacant homes.
This was a house we showed up at in New York. This was in Amityville, New York on Long Island. It was a house where allegedly 2 young boys, 7 and 10, were sent to a sponsor there. And we showed up and the house is totally derelict and shut down. Nobody lives there anymore. We tried calling the phone number associated with the sponsor and it was just disconnected. 2 children were delivered to a sponsor that lives at this address. But as you can see, nobody lives here. And honestly, it doesn't look like anybody's lived here in quite a long time.
On a hidden camera, Border Patrol admits they know this is going on.
Have you seen the movie?
Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Exactly like that shit happens.
You guys get the kids coming over here with the notes that are attached to them with the addresses, right? And a lot of times those addresses lead to like a sex trafficker or something, right? That's legit.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit that we can't tell.
What's the issue though? Why can't you guys talk on camera?
the policies that we have, the things that we can and can't say. Honestly, bro, I really wish there was more people like you exposing this shit. Because it sucks. It truly is a horrible thing. It is a horrible thing.
Once they're detained and they're in the hands of Border Patrol and then HHS, that's it. Even if they say, listen, I just want to go back to my parents, I was smuggled here, they will not send the kid back home. They send him off at best to a foster care system.
See it all at muckraker.com. For InfoWars, this is Greg Reese. Thank you for watching the latest Greg Reese Report. Be sure to go to reesereport.com to see my latest videos, sign up for my free newsletter, and subscribe for exclusive content. And be sure to support my sponsor at InfoWarsStore.com.
The numbers are staggering, almost too large to comprehend. Every day, an estimated 400 children are smuggled across the U.S. border, victims of a silent epidemic. These children, fleeing poverty and violence, are lured with promises of a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a nightmare of exploitation and abuse. The scope of this issue is immense, reaching far beyond border towns and into the heart of our communities. Separated from their families, these children are hidden in plain sight, exploited for labor, sex, and even organ harvesting. The recent investigation by muckraker.com has exposed a system riddled with loopholes and indifference. The fight against child trafficking is a test of our compassion and commitment to justice. Behind the staggering numbers and the shocking headlines are real children with real stories. Take, for example, the story of Sofia, a 15-year-old girl from Honduras who was promised a job and a chance to go to school in the United States. Lured by the promise of a better life, Sofia embarked on a perilous journey north, only to be met with unimaginable cruelty. Upon crossing the border, she was separated from her group and taken to a house where she was held captive, forced to work long hours without pay, and subjected to physical and sexual abuse. Sofia's story is not an isolated incident. It is a chilling example of the countless children who are treated as mere commodities, their lives traded for profit. The trauma inflicted on these children is immeasurable. We must remember that behind the statistics are real children, each bearing the weight of unimaginable suffering, each deserving of our compassion and our unwavering commitment to justice.
The harrowing reality of child trafficking in America is perhaps best understood through the first-hand accounts of those who have witnessed its horrors. I, Carlos Arellano, a former truck driver, unknowingly became entangled in the trafficking network. In my testimony to Congress, I described the cramped and inhumane conditions in which children are transported. Packed like sardines into sweltering tractor trailers, deprived of food, water, and basic sanitation, these children endure journeys marked by fear and despair.
These accounts are corroborated by reports from Border Patrol agents like myself. We describe being overwhelmed by the sheer number of unaccompanied minors attempting to cross the border. Despite our efforts, we are often limited in our ability to intervene, bound by policies and procedures that often prioritize immigration enforcement over child protection.
The stories shared by Arellano, Border Patrol agents, and others who have witnessed the realities of child trafficking serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of this crisis. Perhaps the most disturbing revelation from the muckraker.com investigation is the discovery of children living in deplorable conditions in abandoned homes across the country. These safe houses, as they are cynically called, are far from safe. They are often dilapidated and unsanitary, lacking basic necessities like running water, electricity, and proper sanitation. Children found in these homes, some as young as 5 years old, exhibit signs of severe neglect and trauma. Many are malnourished, suffering from untreated medical conditions, and exhibit signs of psychological distress. They live in fear, often locked inside these dilapidated structures, their cries for help going unanswered. The fact that such conditions can exist in the shadows of American society is a shameful indictment of our collective conscience. The discovery of these abandoned and forgotten children should serve as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the fight against child trafficking is far from over. While the horrors of child trafficking are often attributed to shadowy criminal networks, the reality is far more complex and disturbing.
The Muckraker.com investigation uncovered a deeply troubling truth: the complicity of government agencies in perpetuating this crisis. Reports indicate that children in the custody of government agencies, including those entrusted with their care and protection, are disappearing at alarming rates.
These are not isolated incidents. They are indicative of a systemic failure to adequately track and monitor vulnerable children, leaving them susceptible to exploitation by traffickers.
The investigation revealed instances where government officials turned a blind eye to credible reports of abuse and neglect within government-funded shelters.
The complicity of government agencies in the trafficking crisis is a betrayal of the public trust and a national disgrace. The fight against child trafficking is not just about exposing the horrors, it's about amplifying the voices of survivors.
Eleanor, a survivor of child sex trafficking, shared her story with Muckraker.com, detailing how she was groomed and manipulated by a trafficker who preyed on her vulnerability as a runaway. Elena's story highlights the insidious nature of trafficking, where coercion and control often replace physical force, making it difficult for victims to identify themselves as victims and seek help.
Another survivor, Miguel, recounted his experience being trafficked for labor, forced to work long hours in grueling conditions on a farm. Miguel's story sheds light on the hidden nature of labor trafficking, where children are often exploited in plain sight, their plight unnoticed and their voices silenced.
The stories of Elena, Miguel, and countless other survivors are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
The trauma inflicted on children who have been trafficked extends far beyond the physical abuse they may have endured. The emotional and psychological scars of exploitation can last a lifetime, impacting their ability to form healthy relationships, trust others, and lead fulfilling lives. Many survivors struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, characterized by flashbacks, nightmares, and intense anxiety. They may also experience depression, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating, making it challenging to succeed in school or hold down a job. The sense of shame and stigma associated with trafficking can further isolate survivors, preventing them from seeking help or confiding in loved ones. It is crucial to remember that healing from trafficking is a long and arduous journey, one that requires specialized care, unwavering support, and a commitment to addressing the root causes of this horrific crime. By providing survivors with access to trauma-informed therapy, safe housing, and educational and employment opportunities, we can empower them to rebuild their lives and reclaim their futures. Why are so many children falling through the cracks? The alarming number of missing and trafficked children points to a deeply flawed system. Understanding these systemic failures is crucial for developing solutions. A major issue is the lack of coordination between agencies. This creates gaps that traffickers exploit. Overburdened caseworkers can't provide needed support. A call to action. What can we do to protect our children? The fight against child trafficking is not a hopeless one. By raising awareness, demanding accountability from our elected officials, and supporting organizations working on the front lines, we can create a world where every child is safe from exploitation. Education is key. We must educate ourselves, our children, and our communities about the realities of trafficking, the tactics used by traffickers, and the signs of exploitation. By recognizing the warning signs, we can intervene early and potentially save a child's life. Advocacy is crucial. We must demand that our elected officials prioritize child protection by enacting and enforcing stronger laws, allocating adequate resources to child protection services, and holding those who exploit children accountable for their crimes. Hope in the darkness. Organizations fighting for change. Amidst the heartbreaking stories and the daunting statistics, there is hope. Across the country, dedicated individuals and organizations are working tirelessly to combat child trafficking, rescue survivors, and provide them with the support they need to heal and rebuild their lives. Organizations like Polaris Project operate national hotlines, providing critical resources and support to victims and survivors of trafficking. Their data analysis and advocacy efforts are instrumental in shaping policy and driving systemic change. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children plays a vital role in locating missing children, providing resources to families and educating the public about child safety. Local organizations, often staffed by passionate volunteers, provide essential services to survivors in their communities. Towards a brighter future ending child trafficking in our time. Ending child trafficking in our time is not an idealistic dream. It is a moral imperative that demands our collective action. By working together, we can create a world where every child is safe, valued, and free from exploitation. We must challenge the societal norms and systemic inequalities that make children vulnerable to trafficking. This includes addressing poverty, improving access to education and healthcare, and promoting gender equality. We must hold those who exploit children accountable for their crimes, ensuring that traffickers face swift and severe consequences. Most importantly, we must listen to the voices of survivors, learn from their experiences, and amplify their calls for justice and change. The fight against child trafficking is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires sustained effort, unwavering commitment, and a belief in the inherent dignity and worth of every child.
Vice President Harris has faced criticism for seemingly neglecting the border crisis that she played a part in creating for over 3 years. Her recent visit to the border, which some view as a mere photo op, has been met with skepticism and accusations of insincerity. Many have questioned her whereabouts during the ongoing crisis, likening her visit to that of a criminal returning to a crime scene. This has drawn attention to the irony of her pledges to enhance border security, considering her role in allowing millions of illegal immigrants into the country while serving as the border czar.
I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it. Whoa. I did try and fuck her. She was married.
That's huge news, Sarah.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. Then all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
Pull the ham.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, what's going on there? You know, what always fascinates the most that the mainstream media libtards, okay, and the radical left will get their panties in a bunch over a Hollywood Access tape where Trump made some lewd comments or regular guy talk. Yet they will totally ignore the human trafficking going along our southern border with young women and girls and children. Shows the hypocrisy. Show how big hypocrites they really are, okay? We have a major child exploit problem here in the United States where a lot of young girls and little girls are main victims of this. But the Democrats are totally silent on that. They don't care. Only thing they care about what suits their political interests and their political needs, okay? Their only outrage was politically convenient, basically, okay? That's exactly what this is. Because it's been going on for years, the Democrats have been totally silent on this issue. There's a lot of young women and children being smuggled in the United States for sex slavery mainly and for labor, for free or cheap labor, basically, where they're forced here in the United States to work against their will, basically, to raise money against their overlords. And yet the Democrats, and I would say Republicans as well, are totally silent on this issue. I mean, what's fair is fair. I gotta include Republicans in this because a lot of them are responsible too. Okay, I have to be fair, but maybe I'm attract Democrats because they get their panties in a bunch over Trump making crude comments, you know, or any conservative they don't like making crude comments. They get their panties in a bunch, but ignore Bill Clinton's fact of his sexual predators, or Biden, who's also a sexual predator. They'll ignore them and give them a pass on that. Because they're powerful Democrats. Okay? This is how hypocritical they really are. Yet, you know, they will fucking get their pants in a bunch. They will go on TV screaming and crying, you know, how Trump is promoting assault on women and stuff like that. And yet, we have this human trafficking problem going on with young women and little kids, basically. And yet, the Democrats are totally silent. You know, the Sounds of Freedom, the movie there that's coming out, they tried everything they can to block that movie so people couldn't see that movie. And Democrats were responsible for that. These Democrats are total hypocrites. They're total hypocrites, basically. Hypocrites. And the hypocrisy of the Democrats is just beyond imagination. And now you have Kamala Harris on the southern border, basically saying she is screaming that she's going to secure the southern border, and screaming the fact she's going to finish Trump's wall. Yet she's been VP for 3.5 years, going on 4 years now, and she has done nothing but let that border wide open and allow all this human trafficking, human smuggling going on in the United States for the past 3.5 years. And the Democrats are totally silent on this issue. Kamala Harris will allow sex trafficking of young women, girls, and kids, basically. She'll allow that because it goes along with her political interests, and they're funding her campaign. This is the total hypocrisy we are facing here in the United States. Total hypocrisy right here. And let me tell you something. Whether you like Trump or not, okay, Trump pretty much stopped it, but he slowed it way down. While Trump was president, illegal border crossings was at a record low. Very record low. But when Biden came into office, it exploded like no tomorrow. And now, thanks to Biden and Kamala's ignorance here, and Secretary Mayorkas, you know, Department of Homeland Security Director, or Security, whatever we call him, or the Secretary of Homeland Security, has allowed this to happen, and all the Democrats gives them a pass. They just stand by and let it happen. I'm talking about the total hypocrisy of the Democrats, okay, of the Democrats and some rival Republicans, because they'll allow this shit to happen because it gives them money and power. Yet their panties in a bunch for a Hollywood access tape, basically, of Trump making some lewd comments. I'm not defending Trump on tape, but you have to call the cat ugly, okay? And basically, I'm guilty of that myself. Every guy that I know of, no matter how moral he thinks he is, has guilty of making comments similar to that, okay? I'm not trashing people who make those comments because I really can't. I've done it myself. I really have. So I really can't really say anything about that, okay? But Democrats and you round Republicans, don't come at me about Trump's abuse on women or GOP's war on women. Yet you stand by and let little girls and young women be smuggled across the southern border, or in some cases you have American little girls, American young women, be smuggled across state lines and forced into sex slavery, and you're totally silent on this issue. I'll repeat that again. When Democrats, will scream about GOP's war on women or Trump's promotes sexual assault on women, yet you liberal hypocrites, you libtard hypocrites, will be totally silent on the fact we have little girls and young women being smuggled across the United States, across the southern border, across the state lines, everything else, and basically be forced into sexual prostitution. You're hypocrites, okay? You're totally hypocrites, alrighty? Check out the next video right here, and this guy will explain to me how he was forced. Now I say forced, but how he was in this industry and what happened ever since Joe Biden took power, and how the Democrats are totally silent on this issue, okay? It's a long video, but, I advise you to watch it. Peace out. Bye-bye.
FormerCarlos.com. Most people know who you are in our audience, but a lot of new viewers are tuned in today. So I just want to ask both of you to spend a few minutes talking to the viewers and listeners about why you got into this, what you've experienced, what you've seen, and then out of all the great work you've done, this latest list of names out of the 325,000 they admit are here, that's just what they know of smuggled children for slavery and sex slavery, going out to their last known addresses and what you discovered. And we've got just hours of footage here in your latest big report that just broke today. When we're done with this live interview, we'll just tag the entire 20-minute plus report on the end of it so people make sure and watch that. But we'll also go through some clips group of transgender sex workers who are illegal, non-citizen election threat suspect, Venezuelan women that have been grabbed not knowing where they're going, children not going where they're going, just Catholic charities, RCV border trafficking operation. You've got that, foreign interference in the election. I mean, this all ties together, but just go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, thank you for having us on again. You know, we've been on here so many times. You've highlighted a lot of our work, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. My name is Anthony Rubin, founder of muckraker.com. Just to give a little intro, I started doing all this independent journalism largely inspired by guys like Alex Jones. You know, watching your show when we were all locked down during COVID and you know, trying to think what I could do. And so I started my own outlet. That was the best way I could think to fight back. And, you know, one thing led to another, and now we're tracking down children that are being trafficked in America. And the reason why we're here today speaking with Alex Jones is because we were given a list from a government insider earlier this summer, in June of this year. And the list had 8,000 names of alien children who came across the border without parents, alone, and their last known addresses, along with, you know, many other columns of data. And we run around the country, 10 plus different states, all east of the Mississippi, for the last 3 months, tracking down these kids. And what we found essentially confirms all of the whistleblower reports that have been quote unquote conspiracy until now. We found in Florida, for example, there was a situation where 2 Guatemalan illegal aliens, a husband and wife, were bringing in all these different children and using these different houses to bring them in. So they would have a few children sent to one house, a few children sent to another house, some children sent to a third house, and they had 5 different houses that we know of.
Show the kids talking about how they've been grabbed. They don't know where they're going. Show the house. I just hope listeners, since we don't have it, I guess, will actually just go to your X account and see it for themselves. So go ahead and tell people.
Absolutely. To give one example of what's in the report, we went to Florida. There was a suspected human trafficking case going on in Florida that involved, like I said, this couple, this Guatemalan illegal alien couple that's living in Florida now, and they were using multiple houses to bring in these children, right? They would have some children sent to one house, some children sent to another house, and they were able to get past any sort of, you know, vetting procedure, government oversight, by essentially gaming the system like that. And they were bringing them in. Now, also at these same houses, there were other illegal aliens that were living there, also bringing in children. And so we found 2 of these kids that were sent to this couple that you guys just saw on screen there. Again, just to take a back step, this case was referred to Homeland Security investigation. It was sent to HHS, Health and Human Services, and the FBI as well, apparently, and nothing was done about it. Apparently, they weren't able to find these kids. To the best of our knowledge, I mean, nothing was done. So we were able to go find 2 of the kids that were sent there, and they told us, yeah, you know, there were just all these men living in a house with us. There were just mattresses everywhere. We were brought there, and there was a debt held over our head, and we were put to work. You know, they bring in these kids as young as 5 years old, is what we were told by this young girl. And as soon as they get there, they say, tomorrow you're going to work, and there is a debt held over their head. And they were able to get out of it. They ended up just taking off, and they've been threatened for the last few years with this debt that's been held over their head. And that's just one example. I mean, there's other stuff, but we could pause there and talk about that.
And again, you're dealing with limited funds, you and Carlos, Anthony, and Carlos ship anytime you want. And Carlos, again, used to work in the shipping of the kids and it's blew the whistle to Congress and really exposed a lot of this, and has now since been working with you. But where is the FBI? Where are the agencies with missing children that have been taken to houses or taken to airfields that just disappear with little or no paperwork? Then you go to the house and no one's there, or you talk to them, they say, oh, I just gave the little girl to somebody. I mean, let that sink in. This is crazy.
Well, that's why I think it's important that Carlos is here, because Carlos saw that happening firsthand. The planes showing up in open fields and, you know, buses just coming and picking up the kids.
Carlos, spend a few minutes, because I can describe you, but you can do it better yourself, what you've seen and now this latest report.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I spent over 2 decades working for NGOs, and to be more specific, I spent about 7 years escorting children around the country, delivering them from point A to point B. And for the longest time, we've been speculating, you know, where have these children been ending up? Are they in sex slavery? Are they dead? Organ harvesting? And one of the biggest issues we ran into on this trip was that a lot of these so-called sponsors were telling us, oh, we gave the child away the moment it got here. We gave it away after a day, or we gave it away after 2 days. And that is very frustrating because it's how do you give a child away when you signed custody for the child saying you were going to take care of it until 18 years old? And after they tell us, oh, well, they gave it away, there's no way to find this child anymore. And that's where, you know, you can't tell someone, well, they're not in sex slavery or their organs weren't harvested when they were given away after a day or two and no one knows where they went. It's a dead end. Those kids are lost forever, never going to find them again. And the other issue that we ran into a lot was that we were running into children who were supposed to be in places like Texas or Virginia, but we were finding them in Louisiana, Alabama, or in Tennessee. And it's how are you 8-6 states away from your home address? And we ran into one specific child who was about 13 years old, 14 years old, and she showed us about 10, 15 cuts on her arms. And I believe that's in the video. It's blurred out, but she shows us her arms where she was cutting herself. And she wouldn't tell us the reason why she was doing that, but you can only imagine, you know, what's a teenage girl doing, cutting her wrist, trying to kill herself.
And I do just want to add this, because you were talking about, Alex, you asked, you know, Carlos about what's the deal with, you know, you have all these agencies that have unlimited funds, essentially, but nothing's being done about this. What Carlos just said kind of touches upon the main issue that we were finding. You know, we are just 2 guys, or 3 guys, actually, at some points of this trip, going around the country trying to speak to these children, trying to find them and see what information we could get. There were so many situations that we encountered where you could just look at the child and know something is off. I'll give you one example. There was a girl that we found in Louisiana who we knock on the door. At first they tell us she's gone, you can't talk to her, and then we keep pressing, and then they're like, oh, maybe we could find her. And, you know, eventually they call her out of a house somewhere. She's hanging out with some hoodlums. And this is a young girl. I mean, this is a girl that's in her early teens. And we find her, and we start talking to her, and this girl literally has the voice of a man who has been doing hardcore drugs for years, okay? She doesn't look well. Her eyes are glazed over. But the issue here is that we are not law enforcement, right? We have no enforcement power. All we can do is speak, right, and talk to them and hope that they want to give us information. If they don't, there's nothing we can do. So if there's any, you know, legitimate government agency, law enforcement agency that wants to get these addresses from us, we can point them in the right spot, you know, and tell them where to go to find these kids so that they can follow up. But when we see a bad situation like that, there was nothing that we could do. So we could speculate, but, you know, our powers stop with being able to shoot the information on camera, and that's it.
And this isn't being done in a vacuum. Almost every major city has got Soros DAs and county attorneys in charge of them. They let serious criminals, including armed robbers, out of jail without even bond. Here's an example today. Seattle police issue new alarm response policy, and they go on to say officers won't respond to burglary alarms. So that's what we're dealing with here. And so you wonder how there can be all this sex trafficking, as Project Veritas and then James O'Keefe and you and others have shown right here in Austin, Texas. 10-year-old girl saying, I'm a sex slave. The police won't even come. They have created a total atmosphere for this to be going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, the thing is, you go to a lot of these spots, you go to these different apartment complexes we visited, you know, more than I can even remember. And it is a situation where if you look at what happened in Aurora, Colorado, with these guys walking around with assault rifles, that is happening in every state across the country now. Total lawlessness. And in a lot of...
You're talking about the Venezuelan gangs, but stuff like that.
Stuff like that is happening in every single state. That's not an anomaly, right? There are these apartment complexes. It's the same thing that we're also visiting these apartment complexes, knocking on doors and asking, hey, are you registered to vote? And they say, oh yeah, somebody came through here the other day and registered all of us. And so what I'm saying is, you're talking about how it's total lawlessness. It is. They're being put in these designated earmarked communities that are totally illegal alien, like this one you see here on screen. This is the projects in the Bronx, and that's like 95% illegal alien. And they're put there. It's just a hornet's nest for crime and prostitution. They get them registered to vote, and that's it. I mean, you know, that's the situation.
By the way, I've got video of this. It's now all over the country. Particularly black folks are finding out that they're junior and senior high school kids, because some of them, flunk grades, but 17, 18 are all being told to register Democrat, and then they're bringing in, mail-in ballots, having them fill out the ballot saying, because Trump wants to hurt black people, and having them fill out the ballots.
Right.
I mean, just total fraud.
It does not surprise me. It does not surprise me at all. We've done countless different stories now going to these different states and just speaking to illegal aliens. Hey, are you registered to vote? Yeah, I'm registered to vote. Who do you plan on voting for? Kamala Harris. So,
by the way, Gallup and others have done national surveys and found, on average, 15% of illegals will answer the question and say they are voting or have voted.
And we also ran into, there's some people who go out there and say, well, these illegals don't know what you're talking about. We've run into a lot who tell us, oh no, we can't vote. We're here illegally. We don't want to get in any trouble. And we have a lot of those cases where they know what they're getting into, what they're doing. And people can't use that excuse. We have plenty of evidence where they're very aware of it.
And then let me say this. We got this guy, Ken Benzinger from the New York Times, who likes to go around and follow our reporting and then try to debunk it. And so what he did is he looked at our report that we put out in Georgia with these illegal aliens admitting to being voter registered. And then he thought he was being smart, I guess. And they sent a team down there and they found one of the people that we spoke to that admitted to being voter registered. And she goes, and apparently this illegal alien told him, I was lying to them because I was afraid if I didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, they would deport me. And they published this as if that's like what, how do you operate? Like, do you have a brain? Obviously that's a load of garbage, but this is what they publish to gaslight people into thinking that we're conspiracy theorists, and you have these millions of people that read the New York Times and actually believe this stuff. And
have you heard they filed criminal charges, the Haitians, an NGO run by Soros, against Trump, saying mean phone calls or anything else that happens is Trump's fault. They want him put in jail. And Ohio's passed a law. They're going to try to indict Trump and J.D. Vance. Yeah,
and well, this is the thing, right? So Trump can't talk about them eating cats and dogs and geese and whatever else in Springfield, but you could have these labor trafficking rings, the sex trafficking rings opening across the country. Let me, if we can, there's other stuff in the report that I'd like to highlight because...
You got the floor, yeah.
There was a situation where we went to the projects of the Bronx, very dangerous area, and we went in and found one of these girls, and we were talking to her, and she was telling us a few things. Number one, that the kids in this facility that they were at in California were put on pills. Maybe, Carlos, you could speak more to that. You have these young girls and boys.
You guys have done such amazing work. So muckraker.com, Real Muckraker on X, and Real Muckraker on YouTube. It's just such important work. And, of course, Carlos, your great site. People can find it there as well. InformantCarlos.com. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, Carlos, you were the one doing a lot of the speaking in Spanish, so maybe you could talk about how she was talking about how the kids are on pills in these facilities, how they're taken away at 3 in the morning and sent to places that they don't know. They're not allowed to say goodbye, and they're crying because they don't know where they're going. They're being sent to a stranger, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I've done countless of interviews about my time moving these kids, and InfoWars has been the one place where they've never tried to censor me on what I used to do. And one of the things that I used to do was I used to move kids in the middle of the night in private airfields, private charter planes. And for the longest time, I've been getting told by multiple outlets, don't speak on that because that's QAnon, that's crazy, that's a conspiracy theory. We don't want to go down that route. But when we went out on this trip, we had countless of kids, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds tell us that, they woke us up at 3 in the morning and they took us to a private airfield where the entire plane was full of kids. And I asked them over and over again, did you see other adults on this plane, or were all the seats just children? And they would say the entire plane, every single seat was a child on it. And then they spoke on how they would land in New York and get on charter buses. And then when their sponsor finally picked them up, they picked them up at a park, at a public park in the middle of the night. And I would get confirmation from the sponsor as well. What time did you pick your child up? Did you pick them up at the airport or at the park? And they confirmed that as well. It was at 3 in the morning in the park. And these kids, all of them told stories about how they had little friends that they lost touch with, they never heard from again. And these friends promised them that they were going to add them on Facebook, that they were going to reach out to them when they got to their state that they were designated to go to. And a lot of these little girls were worried about friends they never heard from again. And then we've even had one specific situation in Florida where we were told Homeland Security showed up to these addresses and they did nothing. Their excuse was, oh, we couldn't find the children. And this is Homeland Security we're talking about, the federal government saying they can't find the kids, but two guys with very limited resources were able to find the kids in one day. We found them in one day. So
and let me back up what you're saying. I've been at the border. Our crew has. We've shown as soon as Biden got in, the planes loads full of kids. It was going on under Obama the last few years, but then it stopped under Trump. And then we would talk about it 3.5 years ago. People said, oh, it's a conspiracy theory in the New York Times. And then we had footage of the kids getting on the plane, some of them babies being carried on, them handing the babies over, no paperwork. And then the media would say it doesn't exist. Finally, it's broken out the last few years. But as you said, they then go, oh, no, that's crazy. You've been to the Walmarts where they stack the kids. You've been on the airplane shipping them around. Later in the last couple of years, they've admitted, oh, secret nighttime flights. And finally, media in New Jersey and New York and Minnesota and Tennessee and Florida caught it. And then the governor of Florida made a big deal about it and started, pointing it out. But notice the first few years, they would just deny it was going on so that no one would ever be able to say, hey, that's wrong, secretly shipping kids around at night, giving them to God knows who. So what we'll do is we'll take this interview today, because I'm going to do it myself if I need to, and we will take everything you say with your clips. In fact, I'll do it. I'll put it together. And we'll then show the airplanes. We'll show the kids. We'll show your footage. We'll show mine, because we can actually show this to people, because that's what's so insane about this. I mean, this is going on. It's admitted now. The Senate report, 325,000 kids missing, many in sex slavery, many in industrial slavery. The New York Times admits that while they try to cover up the rest of it. I mean, this is... So the reason the feds won't respond is they're the ones that complete the smuggling process, so the other agencies aren't supposed to expose it. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. And that's why they move these kids at 3 a.m. And that's what was confirmed to us, that they are moved at 3 a.m, that they're put on a private charter plane, like Carlos just said, and then they're dropped off in the middle of a field. They have the sponsors come and meet them in the middle of some field somewhere.
And by the way, it came out in the last few years. It shows the planes, and reporters show the kids coming off in the field and being put in vans.
Right. So that is, that's the situation. And so, I mean, Carlos, you've told me so many stories when you were on the inside, about what you saw. I think that people need to hear that one more time, because it's just so powerful.
Yeah, you've got the floor now when we come back, because you're an eyewitness. You've testified to Congress, legislatures. I mean, you worked there for decades.
Yeah, it's...
You said you saw it change and get from good to bad.
From good to bad, yes. There was times where I wouldn't even get called for work during the Trump administration, and then the Biden administration came into place, and we were getting called every single day. I was flying 9 to 12 different planes a week, and you would arrive at certain camps, and you were told, well, the kids in this camp are suicidal, they're cutting themselves. The kids in this camp are pregnant teenagers. Excuse me. And in 2021, when the Biden administration was in place, you would just hear the craziest stories. You would hear, all right, you guys are not flying today. You guys, your job is to get in vans and drive these teenage girls to an abortion clinic to get an abortion done in California.
Wow.
And that's another one that people don't really know about. And it's just countless of things that you try to forget about, but you slowly remember when you see these kids again. And in California, that was a big one. And I know it doesn't surprise people that it's in California, but a lot of the people who would get on the airplanes with these kids, their job was to drive these girls to an abortion clinic and get the baby killed. And the other concerning part about the California kids is that these California camps were erasing pregnant girls from the records at these camps. And then as we were going on our trip, we were finding a lot of these girls that were saying, yeah, I was pregnant while I was in California, and this is the baby. And it's, why were you trying to hide that pregnant girls were ever at your camp, What's the story there? Where
are the kids going? Where are the babies going?
Yeah.
This is a massive illegal industry. We're going to go to break. During the break, I'm going to go in there, because you can pull this up. We can search engine. We even shot it ourselves. You can pull up secret nighttime flights of children, of migrants. And you can get the footage from New Jersey, everywhere. We can show that to TV viewers. So people see this, listening or watching, can actually see that while they're saying this is on record. And then this has come out for years now, but it doesn't ever get the attention. Hell, it doesn't even get attention around here because we get punch drunk, we get conditioned, we get our will broken by this mass evil. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Today's conspiracy theories, tomorrow's truths.
Some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones? The Trump-Russia witch hunt, Jeffrey Epstein, JFK assassination, the misuse of the Patriot Act, the Iraq War, the weapons of mass destruction, the war in Ukraine, the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline, the open border migration caravans, the climate change scam, chemtrails, and HARP, and 9/11 being an inside job, and the Internet of Things surveillance grid, and PFAs, and chemicals in the water turning everyone gay, and the 2020 election being stolen, and January 6th being filled with undercover feds, and Bilderberg, and Bohemian Grove, and global government, not to mention gain-of-function research, and the threat of China, and collapsing birth rates, and defund the police, and George Soros, and mail-in ballots, and big tech censorship, and disinformation agencies, and Obama's birth certificate, and probably some others I can't think of. I mean, so a few of them. I guess a couple of them have been true.
You will meet so many amazing people wearing the shirt. I'd say you'll get probably 50 compliments before you get one person screaming at you.
Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States.
But it's an adventure to wear any of these shirts, but particularly this one. Get this design and so many others. They're limited edition at thealexjonesstore.com. Keep us on air in our fight against the globalists. And I want to thank you so much for your support, because literally, when you call in thanking me on air, I say stop, because I'm thanking you. I love fighting the globalists. This is what I do. We've had such a huge effect together. So I want to thank you all for your past support. Encourage you now to go to thealexjonesstore.com and be sure to enter for the free truck and $10,000 and buy more product, support the broadcast, and get entered 5 or 10 times, depending on the day, each time you buy a product. This new initiative is so important to the future. So everybody, if you support what we're doing and want to get great shirts and ball caps at the same time, go to thealexjonesstore.com. And I almost forgot, most of these shirts come in multiple colors. And again, folks, InfoWars will be sold November 13th. If we don't have a buyer that's a patriot, obviously the left says they want to buy it and close it. It's not about getting them money. It's not about those families. It's all run by the FBI on record. That's on record. Tucker Carlson talked about it, you name it. But if you want to support our sponsors, they will obviously be able to continue on with whatever happens, whatever new thing is set up. But they're also supporting InfoWars as we speak. I need you to go to thealexjonesstore.com. Get some great T-shirts, great ball caps. Also go to drjonesnaturals.com, my dad's supplement company with the best nano silver products, next level foundational energy, and so much more at drjonesnaturals.com. And these guys are just my heroes. I've been there. I've seen just a snapshot of what they've seen, and it's really upset me. Carlos, I see you almost start breaking down when you're talking about working for DHS and then becoming a whistleblower, seeing these kids being grabbed, many of them obviously kidnapped, scared, tortured, raped. They won't, they finally open up to you. You've told the stories before, and you're on these flights flying them everywhere. You've got the floor here, because this is so important for people to understand. Anthony keeps pointing at you because you're the guy that's been through this. And, of course, we can put some of the footage of these flights up there they don't want us to talk about. They try to deny this is going on, but it is going on, and it's still going on. What you've witnessed, what you've seen.
Yeah, well, the flight we're looking at right now, I actually had some coworkers on that flight, and they were on a 3-day trip, meaning they were going to arrive in New York. If this is the one I'm thinking it is, it's upstate New York. And they were going to get in rentals, and they also got in charter buses. And some groups head out to Connecticut. Some groups drop off in the rest of New York. Some go as far as North Carolina. And all these kids are on this plane, the entire plane. They don't know where they're going. And that was confirmed to us, not just by myself and other whistleblowers, but the kids we visited on this trip that we did for this video.
And they don't know who they're going to.
No, they don't know who they're going to either.
Now imagine you adopt somebody. My sister, Marley, well, I was 14 when we adopted her. She's from South Korea. There was a whole record of her mother was single. Over there particularly, it's hard for single mothers to keep a kid in that culture. So we adopted her. She's great. 6 months old. She's my sister. I love her as much as blood. But there was a whole year-long process before she was even born, for kids that were going to be given up. Then there was a whole process after that. Tons of social workers, money to make sure my parents were good, interviews, all this stuff, and we got my sister. Imagine just handing them out and then they just disappear, and the federal government's involved in it and doesn't care. I mean, just think about the evil we're talking about.
Yeah, and we had a lot of kids in the New York area with their sponsors where I asked them, hey, did you go through any fingerprints? Did you go through any type of background to get this child?
Getting a dog from the pound, there's more paperwork.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of these sponsors told us no. They said no fingerprints, no background. All I did was sign a piece of paper and they gave the kid to me. And then they turned around and gave the kid away 2 days later. And it was just mind-blowing because we have, if Congress ever really wants to do anything, we have a lot of footage of these parents, these quote-unquote parents saying we didn't do fingerprints, we didn't do nothing. We just got the kid 3 days later, and they told us to show up at the airport or show up at the park. And it's very scary because these kids, a lot of them, the kids that are arriving the most into the United States, they're from Guatemala. And a lot of them don't even speak Spanish. They speak a dialect. They speak a native language in Guatemala. They think they have about 8 or 9 of them. So if they're being trafficked, there's no way for them to communicate even with myself because I don't speak their language.
They speak Native American tongues.
Yes, they do. And a lot of the times to even communicate with those kids, we'd have to ask other kids in the shelter, hey, can you translate this to him? Tell him to do this, tell him to do that. And we would have to use other kids because there's nowhere, you can't go to the unemployment office or you can't call a number and say, hey, I need a native language from Guatemala. It's very hard to find. And the companies I used to work for, they used to offer $40, $50 to anybody who can speak that native tongue, that native language from Central America, and they could never find anybody. And these kids, how are they going to communicate? Hey, I'm being trafficked. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And it's impossible for them.
What about all the footage we shot personally in South Texas where the same woman every hour pulls up with another baby, says, this is my baby. There's no fingerprints, no nothing, and they just hand the baby off to some woman who just disappears or some man. Where the hell do those babies go?
Yeah, so those are going across the country to others, to quote-unquote sponsors. And I'm so glad you guys, when I first saw that you guys had that footage, I was so relieved because I've always shared a story that the youngest child I moved was 3 months old.
Wow.
And a lot of people look at me like they don't want to believe it. It's hard for them to believe. But then that InfoWars crew has footage of babies being passed around at the airport. And the other thing I've recently shared, it's very hard for me to share everything, not just because I don't want to, but it's just so much that I forget. And one thing I recently shared in a documentary was that when I moved that 3-month-old, I wasn't given formula, I wasn't given diapers because supposedly I was supposed to land where I was going to drop this child off at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I ended up dropping the child off at 2 in the morning. And
they're not even giving babies food.
Yeah, they don't give babies food.
And they claim Trump's locking kids up in cages, which you never did.
Yeah. And to touch a little on that was that the kids that were being separated during the Trump administration was because these kids would walk up to us. And I had one child walk up to me and say, hey, the guy I'm with in this shelter, he's saying he's my dad, but he's not my dad. He's touching me sexually. He stole me from my home. And he stole me from my home because back then there was a policy from the Obama era where families were allowed to get into the country no matter what. So a lot of these people in Central America were taking children from anywhere they could just to get an automatic entry into the country. And
even mainstream news admits sometimes kids have been smuggled multiple times back and forth as like the ticket into the country.
Right. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things, speaking of the dialects, you know, that would be used against us. There was a house that we went to that was part of that network of houses that was part of that Florida trafficking ring. And we knocked on the door and we said, hey, we're looking for such and such. And it was these Guatemalan men that were living there. And, you know, we would be talking to them, and then they would all start talking amongst themselves in the dialect, in this Guatemalan dialect that we couldn't understand. And then they would answer us. And then we'd ask them another question. They'd all huddle up and start talking this dialect, and they'd answer us, bullshitting us. But that's the situation that Carlos was just talking about, where you have these people that speak these dialects, where it's like there might be a couple of thousand people in the country that speak these things, but there's no way to communicate. And then they could also communicate in secret right in front of you. And no matter who you are, basically, you have no way to decipher what they're saying. And so we ran into that situation as well.
And, oh, man, that footage is crazy right there.
What about Trump got money for DNA testing, rapid testing, to see if somebody was related. And then I learned this year they said they were killing it, but now they had whistleblowers a few months ago in Congress that as soon as Biden got in, even though the money was earmarked, they killed the DNA testing to aid the smugglers in getting through with kidnapped kids. I mean, it's not like the feds are letting this happen; they're aiding it. Sorry, go ahead.
It's on record. The head of HHS is on record saying that this is like a Ford assembly line, that the job is to move the kids out as fast as possible. It's on record in Florida grand juries, or at least they're taking measures to try to stop this, right? I mean, there are some states that won't even look into this, but at least in Florida, they're trying to do the right thing. But there was a Florida grand jury about a year ago where they have people admitting that, you know, there was a situation where an ORR worker, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reported a situation of 100 children being over 100 children being sent to one address in Texas. And they were like, what's going on here? So they reported it to a human trafficking hotline and they got fired, just like that. So that speaks to your point, right? I mean, this is known. They're doing this intentionally. They're sending these people out to, you know, intentionally, or even if it's not intentional, they just don't give a damn, right?
And well, it was Biden saying, when I win, surge the border, the NGOs are giving government funding. They're bringing them up there, so they're basically completing the process.
Right. Can we do this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I gave the crew a couple of clips. Let's start with the first one. I gave them an abandoned house. This was a house we showed up at in New York. This was in Amityville, New York on Long Island. It was a house where allegedly 2 young boys, 7 and 10, were sent to a sponsor there. And we showed up, and the house is totally derelict and shut down. Nobody lives there anymore. We tried calling the phone number associated with the sponsor, and it was just disconnected. So if they have that clip, which we pulled out in the back.
Here it is.
Play it. We are at this house here, 321 Broadway in Amityville, New York on Long Island. Allegedly, 2 children were delivered to a sponsor that lives at this address. But as you can see, nobody lives here. And honestly, it doesn't look like anybody's lived here in quite a long time. So we're not too sure where those 2 children went. It was 2 young boys that were sent here. We're not too sure where they are or if they're even still in New York or even in the country anymore.
I've been telling listeners for months that InfoWars is very close to being shut down. And now people are taking it serious because it's all over the news that InfoWars will be sold at auction coming up on November 16th. Now listen, we've got Patriot buyers. Hopefully they're able to win the bid. But regardless, we're going to continue on. And that means we need sponsors for whatever new organizations get set up. So if you want to keep us on air one way or the other and checkmate the New World Order, go to our sponsors and support them. The AlexJonesStore.com for amazing t-shirts and ball caps that spread the word of the third dimension and fund the operation, and also go to drjonesnaturals.com. That's separate from InfoWars as well. They're sponsors of InfoWars right now. So you support InfoWars, whether it stays in the air or not, and you support sponsors going forward if we've got to set up a new operation and I'll work for somebody else. I don't intend on giving up. I won't give up. I'll never give up, but I could give out if you don't support us. These are great products. You need them. Go to the AlexJonesStore.com and drjonesnaturals.com. Get great products and keep us on the air. God bless you. Now take action.
That's one example. That's one example. They were...
And you've got clips you've just put out new today where you're actually talking to finding the kids.
So there was... We could play the next clip. Let's play the clip that came after that where it's us in a apartment. There's multiple people there. And the girl's telling us how her friends would cry to her at night because they didn't know where they were going. This clip right here.
Roll it.
How many days were you in Pomona, California?
I was there for 35 days.
35? Did you ever hear anyone say they didn't know where they were going?
Well, I remember 2 kids. One said she didn't know where she was going, and the other said she didn't know what would happen. And then, 2 days before I came here, one night before, she cried because she didn't know what they would do with her. We went to sleep, and in the morning, when I got up, she was gone. They had taken her away, and she wanted to say goodbye, but they wouldn't let her.
They wouldn't let her?
No, I don't know what happened.
Because they get them up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
And they said...
They do not allow it.
Pick up everything you're leaving?
And they take them away. It gives me the creeps.
Where was your friend from?
One was from Honduras, and the other was from Guatemala. Well, she was a good friend of mine before that. She always cried and told me her sorrows, and she told me to give her my Facebook. I always waited for her to send me a message, and I never got anything from her.
And how old was she, if you remember?
16. She was 16.
Did you ever hear others say they had asked to be sent back and they wouldn't let them?
Yeah, I heard that.
And so probably one of the most important parts there is at the end where we ask, did you ever hear kids asking to be sent back home and they wouldn't let them? Under current Biden administration policy, they will not send the kids back home. Once they're detained and they're in the hands of Border Patrol and then HHS, that's it. Even if they say, listen, I just want to go back to my parents, I was smuggled here, they will not send the kid back home. They send him off at best to a foster care system.
And then the NGOs and all the foster care systems get more federal funding to take care of the people that don't have a future or have a job.
Correct. Or other times they're sent to a labor trafficking ring. If you guys want to roll the last clip that I gave you of the labor trafficking ring in Florida, where it was this network of houses where they sent all these kids to, and it was run by 2 Guatemalan illegal aliens.
I want to play that in a moment, but first, why do you think the New York Times did a couple articles last year admitting, okay, a lot of these kids are in slave labor, sleeping on the floor as young as 12, working at factories, and they're falling into machines, tire-making machines, cereal boxing machines. Well, was that just covering their bases? Because they try to cover this up with all their other articles, but then separately they're like, okay, this is going on.
Yeah, well, that was Hannah Dreyer, right? And she did a great report there. And, I mean, Carlos, you know her, right? So I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, so from what I understand from her, she thinks the program does some good. She thinks that the program should exist. And even if it means, some kids being put up in risk of trafficking, she believes that it's still doing some good. And she is, I don't understand her.
Well, the end justifies the means. I had the head of the Texas Health Department once on the hike and bike trail. He says, by the way, I'm the head of the health department. He didn't know I Googled his name and found it really was him. And he goes, we know vaccines actually kill a bunch of people, but it helps more than it hurts, which is a lie. But that's their attitude. Well, some get enslaved and killed, but it's for the better good. They're coming from a bad place, so we're going to do this. No. They're bringing in a permanent underclass they control.
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and it's still happening. I forget where it was, but apparently the city of Chicago right now is under investigation because they're sending kids out to Michigan to work at a factory. And that's under investigation right now. And this is the current mayor in Chicago, Mayor Brad Johnson, I believe. He's being accused of sending illegals out to work, illegals who are underage, and it just doesn't stop. And it's a form of cheap labor, and it's going to keep happening. Slavery. And it doesn't matter. They don't care if the kids die. They say, well, there's more kids coming in the following month. And they're going to keep coming. And the last hearing in the Senate, the Democrats in the Senate, they're trying to make it to where it's a lot faster from the moment the kids get to the border. They're trying to bypass the Walmarts. So they want to get rid of the Walmarts and send them directly from the border straight to wherever they're being trafficked to. So they want to bypass these kids meeting someone like me who's trying to do the good thing, the right thing. They want to bypass any chance of trafficking being uncovered, and sending them straight to a sponsor who's supposedly a family member. So that's what the current Senate Democrats are fighting for right now. They're trying to do away with the shelters and just make it really faster, like an assembly line.
And Carlos, you worked there decades and saw a program that was checking the parents and making sure and going, and then you just saw it get bad under Obama, better under Trump, basically go away and then get even, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I've talked to you a lot, but I mean, in your own words, this is really important. People understand you're a famous whistleblower, people that don't know who you are.
Well, what it is it just got out of hand during the COVID era. A lot of the football stadiums, soccer stadiums that shut down, the Biden administration opened them back up to put children inside of these places.
While we're all locked up, they're escalating human trafficking.
They were escalating it. And there's reports. You can go on Google and look up Greg Abbott shows up to the convention stadium in San Antonio, Texas, and shuts it down in 2020-21 because there was reports of some of these kids running away with the workers. So people who were supposed to be taking care of these children were running away with them and getting romantically involved with them.
Total lawlessness.
Yeah, and these kids at these shelters, a lot of them ran away. There was a lot of reports of them running away from the shelter in San Antonio. And just got out of hand. The amount of kids that showed up. A lot of people think that this past year has been the worst for illegal immigration, and it has been. But a lot of people forget that in 2021, Petco Stadium, a lot of the stadiums from California, Arizona, military bases for the
high schools.
Yeah, high schools.
Remember in Chicago, place they were kicking all the kids out of the football. You couldn't the gyms, the football stadiums, the band areas were just no band this year. Illegals live there.
Yeah, and in 2021, instead of being adults, it was all children, and people don't cover it, don't care because it was the beginning of the Biden administration. And more people, if you guys have some time, you need to look up 2021 OR child shelters. You'll see all the horrible reports that came out.
And by the way, I'm glad you raised old reports because this is currently happening. If you go back like 12 years ago, the head of the Clinton Foundation got caught smuggling hundreds of Haitians. People can look this up. Elite children as young as 5 into New York and other areas. She went to prison for a long time. She got out, and recently she heads up the Amber Alert system. You can't make so they know which kids that's what you want to be in control of. Think, folks. Back then, it was still a big enough deal with the feds that she went to jail. This is being done by our own government at a mass scale, and it's just been normalized now.
Right. Well, to a certain extent, when you have all these hundreds of thousands of children coming in, there's no real good answer. I mean, there's more children than you have government workers. What do it's
that's what I'm saying, though, but the government created the problem and funded it to do it.
That's right. That's right. And then they put us all in a crisis, and then people beg for government to then solve the exact same problem that they created. And, one of the things that they do, it's real simple, actually, how they're able to exact, labor and debt payments from these kids, sometimes sexual acts, it's very simple. They threaten them with deportation. They say, and this is what 2 different girls told us in our video. They say, if you don't pay me this debt, if you don't pay for this, if you don't do this, different examples in our video, people can watch it. Well, we're going to stick a judge on you, right? We're going to make sure that you're deported. There was one girl in our video who said that she was threatened and she was told that if you don't do this, you're never going to see your mother back home again, right? And so they're able to do this. These children are in the situation. They don't really know what the legal framework is. Like Carlos was saying before, they speak these dialects. So it's not even like they can really get information in Spanish because they don't understand Spanish, some of them. And so now they're in this foreign country. They're being told, well, there's going to be a judge on you if you don't do what I say.
They're isolated. They're alone.
Isolated and alone. And
sex slavery.
And then because of that, they're able to be exploited with a threat from this, sponsor, quote unquote, of deportation. And a lot of times that it's really as simple as that, right? And their stay in this country, they think is hinged on being a subservient slave to this person.
And aside from the Guatemalan kids, this gets overlooked a lot, but we also moved children, MBM Inc. moved children during the Afghanistan withdrawal. And I moved a lot of kids from Afghanistan who they would tell me, well, this kid's here by himself because his parents are still on an army base in Germany or they're in Italy and they arrived first before they could. And we used to have to use iPads to try to translate. And a lot of these kids were always crying and you could never understand why they were crying. And they were arriving at an Air Force base in Pennsylvania and we were moving them to Chicago and Chicago would move them to somewhere else.
And then they disappear. For all we know, their organs are being harvested. I mean, anything.
And one more thing. This is actually more important than what I just said. So I just said they're threatened with deportation, right? You're going to get sent back or sent somewhere else if you don't do what I say. But another thing that they'll do is a lot of times these sponsors will have tie-ins with the child's family back home, right? So this sponsor, again, this is in our video as well with the Florida ring. The sponsor will pay the smuggling fee for the child to come in here, right? And a lot of times that debt will then fall on the family back home. And these people, can be / are a lot of times gang affiliated. And they'll straight up say, if you don't do what we tell you, your family back home is going to be in serious trouble. And that's another way that they are able to keep these kids subservient. So even if the child
and that's what happens with a lot of the Chinese. The government gets money, lets them come here, and then their family has to pay the debt. They've got to pay back to the family tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm friends with it, not friends, but I'm acquaintances. There's a Chinese illegal alien who I've stayed in touch with over the last year since he came through the Darien Gap, and he's told me stories like that. Absolutely. Exactly like you just said, right? And so that's it's very simple, but that's as simple as it is. It's an incredibly
So how do you
complex
fix
system.
it? You shut down the border, you deport everybody. the military in particularly, you prosecute the NGOs for crimes against humanity, and you don't do global lockdowns that implode the third world so they don't have any food and have to come up here, and you get us out of the UN migrant treaty, and you shut this down.
Absolutely, and we have to hope that if Trump is elected president in 2024, that there are no half measures, because at this point there is no room for that, in my opinion.
All right, stay there. Let's do 5 more minutes ahead of Jason Berman's coming up. Then Owen Schroyer going to be back on with him. And by then, you got here. You're great. You can tell us what clips you want. This hour turned out very, very powerful. I've seen the clips on how powerful they are, so I want to make sure we've got all those ready for the next show. We're going to take this interview and edit it down and then add a bunch of clips to it and get that out tomorrow, because this is so huge, ladies and gentlemen. There's just so much evidence. We're going to get it all in there. Crew's doing a great job. You guys are doing a great job. Carlos, Anthony, stay right there. I'm going to come back. You guys will have the floor for 5 more minutes. Then you'll have a break for an hour. And then you're on with Owen Schroyer in the War Room. Stay with us. Hour number 4, straight ahead. Carlos Ariano is our guest. Anthony Rubin, they're the Muckrakers. Informant Carlos on X, informantcarlos.com. Be sure and support these guys. Anthony Rubin, muckraker.com. We've only got 5 minutes left, and Burmis was going to be on. Actually, it's going to be the Tucker Carlson excerpts of the big event Monday, and then coming up at 3 o'clock in less than an hour, Owen Schroyer. I'm not under the weather, folks, but I just screamed and yelled at that event, and then kind of got something in my throat. I don't have a fever, but I'm not feeling too hot because I only got 3 hours sleep Tuesday night. Not a good thing to do, but I'll be back, hopefully strong, tomorrow here. As soon as I'm off here, I'm going to shoot some key reports on the World War III developments, of the biggest ever. But we're losing our heart and soul with this human trafficking. So solutions, Carlos and Anthony, right now.
Absolutely. Carlos, you want to go first?
Shoot. These solutions. I can't think of anything else right now other than, got to vote for Trump. Got to tell people vote for Trump, because I was working in the moving of the children under his administration, and it was a lot better. I used to worry about, hey, I need to find another job because there's no work, and when there's no work, it means there's no kids to move. So we got to tell people to vote for him, and that's what all I can think about.
That really is the big one. I mean, Trump's going to shut that border down.
He's not only got to shut it down. As far as solutions go, he not only has to shut it down, he has to have, I know he's called for it, but I hope there's actual political will for it once he's in the White House, if he gets there, God willing, to perform mass deportations, millions upon millions of people. Eisenhower did it. It was Operation Wetback was the name of that. And, he was able to deport, over 1 million people. Now we're talking about tens of millions of people. So there needs to be incredible political strength and willpower to be able to pull something off like that. And I hope, I have faith in him, who but him. But, we need to make sure that even once he's in the White House, if he gets there, again, God willing, that we keep the pressure on it. But, people are waking up. And I was telling Alex this, before we came back on air here. People are more awake than ever. And I could say, my own family, my own mother, who never would have listened to Alex Jones, right? Lifelong Democrat. Now a big fan of yours. And, so the point is, it's not about me or my family or my mother. The point is that is a little sample, right? And that if that's happening in my ecosystem, that's certainly happening nationwide. And the nation is waking up, but I hope that it will wake up before we go extinct and go the way of the dodo bird, which, if Kamala is put in office and we have another 10, 20 million people flood the borders, I don't know what the number is, but eventually we cease to exist. And the United States, as we know it, is dissolved into this homogenous North American economic zone. And that is it. Our way of life is gone. So people are waking up. I just hope that there is enough time. We're doing everything that within our power to try to turn the ship around.
I don't know how you guys do it, because I've been down on the border, let's not exaggerate, over the years, 20 times. And just the last few years, it's infuriating to watch the trafficking and not be able to do anything. And then I kind of feel guilty that I can't stop it myself. How do you deal with that? I see you get tears in your eyes, Carlos, talking about this.
Oh, man. You just got to think of the kids, You got to think, got to keep trying, because there's 40 kids right now. It's going to be 40 kids tomorrow and another 40 kids the day after. Secretary Becerra wants to turn it into an assembly line. And one thing we got to remember when we get Trump back in office is he's going to do his best to fix it, but they're going to fight him on it. Just because he wins doesn't mean they're going to roll over and let him do all that he can. And we have to keep supporting him, keep exposing whatever we can, because...
Well, I totally agree.
Yeah, these places, these child places are never going to shut down. But the best thing we can...
And it's going to leak into, and not just poor illegals, it's going to leak into everybody's life now when kids aren't protected.
Oh, yeah.
People think it's going to stop here. You got another thing coming.
Yeah, quickly here in like 20 seconds. I mean, when Trump, if he tries to do mass deportations, there are going to be Democrat leftist law firms coming out everywhere trying to put a stop on this. So it's not like he could just be like, okay, mass deportations. There's going to be lawsuits. They're going to be coming at him. So even lawyers, law firms at a lower local level can probably get involved in this fight. I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know how that works. But, you know, it's going to take everybody. It's going to take all Americans. We can't just hope for some...
And there's more than one way to fight. You'll be able to find those law firms that'll be trying to keep the illegals going are skimming money and corrupt. You don't even fight them legally. You expose their mafia organization and get them indicted. Great job, gentlemen. Tucker Carlson coming up and so much more. And Owen Schroyer in 55 minutes. Great job.
They have all of the kids wearing masks and they have them keeping their head down. They're telling them to hide their face. Many of these kids go missing.
I've even had a little friend. I can't remember her name, but she said she didn't know where she would go.
And MVM is an organization that has moved thousands of...
I don't work for...
You do not work for MVM?
I'm on vacation.
You said that you were on vacation and now you're moving this small child to the airport. I thought you were on vacation. Do you have any comment about the children that have gone missing that you've helped to escort across the country? 2 children were delivered to a sponsor that lives at this address. But as you can see, nobody lives here, and honestly, it doesn't look like anybody's lived here in quite a long time. There's kids in the car here. They're moving these kids. They just turn the lights off.
We owe a debt of $10,000 for me and another $10,000 for my brother.
That van that we just confronted, they are now taking off. We are following them. This van is now trying to lose us. They're driving through this neighborhood that's headed absolutely nowhere.
Are a lot of the kids coming over here, are they trafficked or like, what's the... Some are, I'm not gonna lie, some are.
She cried because she didn't know what they would do with her. We went to sleep, and in the morning, when I got up, she was gone.
Since 2021, an average of 400 unaccompanied children are smuggled into the United States every day. These children, who cross into the United States without parents, are subsequently detained, processed by the federal government's Unaccompanied Children program, and eventually released into the country. On August 19, 2024, the Department of Homeland Security announced that they had lost track of over 300,000 of these children. In June of 2024, a government insider from the Department of Health and Human Services provided Muckraker with a list detailing the names of over 8,000 alien children, along with their last known addresses. So, we began an operation to find the missing children ourselves. Over the course of our investigation, we discovered the dangerous places where children had been delivered, confronted a CIA contractor who moves these children, heard shocking stories from children who the federal government has lost track of, and exposed a child trafficking network in Florida. This report brings to light the fate of the forgotten children who have fallen victim to the criminal negligence of the United States federal government. Children who enter the United States illegally and without parents are subsequently detained and placed in holding camps, while the Office of Refugee Resettlement works to find the child a permanent home through their Unaccompanied Children program. The goal of the Unaccompanied Children program is to place alien children with vetted sponsors, who are typically family members or close family friends. However, we discovered that while in federal government custody, some children ask to be sent back to their home country, but are instead taken away in the middle of the night and sent to sponsors who they do not know. It is also well documented that this program has placed children in the hands of criminal organizations, such as MS-13, as well as labor and sex trafficking rings. We began our operation by door-knocking the addresses associated with the most vulnerable children on our list, focusing on the youngest, who were the most likely to be victims of trafficking. One of our first finds was an abandoned house where 2 boys, aged 7 and 10, had allegedly been delivered.
We are at this house here, 321 Broadway in Amityville, New York on Long Island. Allegedly, 2 children were delivered to a sponsor that lives at this address. But as you can see, nobody lives here, and honestly, it doesn't look like anybody's lived here in quite a long time. So we're not too sure where those 2 children went. It was 2 young boys that were sent here. We're not too sure where they are or if they're even still in New York or even in the country anymore.
Our investigation eventually led us to the projects of the Bronx, where we found a girl who told us a horror story from inside the facility she was detained in at Pomona, California.
How many days were you in Pomona, California?
I was there for 35 days.
35? Did you ever hear anyone say they didn't know where they were going?
Well, I remember 2 kids. One said she didn't know where she was going, and the other said she didn't know what would happen. And then, 2 days before I came here, one night before, she cried because she didn't know what they would do with her. We went to sleep, and in the morning, when I got up, she was gone. They had taken her away, and she wanted to say goodbye, but they wouldn't let her.
They wouldn't let her?
No, I don't know what happened.
Because they get them up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
And they said,
they do not allow it.
Pick up everything you're leaving?
And they take them away. It gives me the creeps.
Where was your friend from?
One was from Honduras, and the other was from Guatemala. Well, she was a good friend of mine before that. She always cried and told me her sorrows, and she told me to give her my Facebook. I always waited for her to send me a message, and I never got anything from her.
And how old was she, if you remember?
16. She was 16.
Did you ever hear others say they had asked to be sent back and they wouldn't let them?
Yeah, I heard that.
The federal government uses contractors to move children from detention centers, like the one this girl was held at, into the hands of their sponsors. One of these contractors is MVM, a private security contractor with ties to the CIA, NSA, FBI, and Homeland Security. Over the past few years, MVM has secured contracts worth tens of millions of dollars to escort detained alien children into the hands of their sponsors. We flew to McAllen, Texas, a major hub where detained alien children are located, and were able to track down MVM contractors as they were moving children.
Excuse me, is this MVM? No. We have footage here that a lot of these children don't know the sponsors that they are going to. What's going on? There's kids in the car here. They're moving these kids. They just turned the lights off. This is the MVM headquarters that we are currently at. There are kids in this van right here that they are moving. There's somebody that's going to come out. Let's see what they have to say. Hey, are you a manager here? Hey, we've spoken to some of these children, and they tell us that they don't know a lot of times the sponsors that they're going to. Do you have any comment on that at all?
No, I don't.
This is MVM, correct?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Excuse me. What's going on here? There they go. And notice they got out of here in such a hurry that they just left their bags here. Think about that. They got out of here. We don't even know what's in those bags. They just left them there and they took off in the van in such a hurry because that's how secret this operation is. They do not want you to know what is going on. That van that we just confronted, they are now taking off. We are following them. We believe that they're taking these kids to the airport. We have talked to some of these children that you guys escort, and some of these children have told us that their friends don't know the sponsors that they're going to. Are you okay with that? Excuse me, why are you all wearing masks? Do you have any comment on that? Why are you hiding your identity? Do you have any shame, sir? There's still time to redeem yourself. Would you like to see the footage that we caught of the girl and what's going on? Were their IDs even checked just there? Were their IDs even just checked? Who checked their IDs? I didn't see any ID check just there. There was no ID check. Right. Why weren't their IDs checked? If I was going to go here...
I can't talk to you about that.
If I'm going to ask you, why do you guys ID American citizens when those children can't do you guys an ID them?
I'm not going to say anything on camera.
Are a lot of the kids coming over here, are they trafficked or like what's the...
Some are. I'm not gonna lie. Some are.
Does that happen a lot that the kids come over here with a totally fake name?
It has.
Yeah?
I mean, there's no way for us to verify.
And so they come over here with a fake name and then they just come up with one. They just get a brand new identity. They could be anybody.
Have you seen the movie?
Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Exactly like that shit happens.
You guys get the kids coming over here with the notes that are attached to them with the addresses, right? And a lot of times those addresses lead to like a sex trafficker or something, right? That's legit.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit that we can't tell.
What's the issue though? Why can't you guys talk on camera?
It's the policies that we have, the things that we can and can't say.
But why don't they want you talking on camera?
Politics.
Politics. What, like making the administration look bad? Or?
Yeah.
Damn.
Honestly, bro, I really wish there was more people like you.
Yeah.
Exposing this shit.
Yeah.
Because it sucks. It truly is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
It is a horrible thing. But me, I can't do that.
You could blow the whistle on it.
No, I can't.
You could, but you're going to lose your job.
Yeah, exactly.
You work for MVM, and MVM is an organization that has moved thousands of...
I don't work for you.
You do not work for MVM?
I'm on vacation.
We've now landed in Houston, and it appears as if MVM has requested a police escort because they don't want media exposing what they're doing. But if you look, they have all of the kids wearing masks and they have them keeping their head down. All of the kids wearing masks, keeping their head down. They're telling them to hide their face. Many of these kids go missing. You said that you were on vacation and now you're moving this small child to the airport. I thought you were on vacation. Ma'am, I thought you were on vacation. What happened to that? Do you have any comment about children that have gone missing that you've helped to escort across the country?
As we worked our way through the list provided to us by the government insider, we encountered sponsors who, for various reasons, no longer had the child. Some told us that they had given the child to somebody else. Others said that the child had returned to their home country. One such case involved a 14-year-old girl named Linda, who had been placed with an unrelated sponsor in Nashville, Tennessee. When we knocked on her sponsor's door, we were told that she had since moved to Louisiana. We were eventually able to track her down and found her living in a rundown neighborhood on the outskirts of New Orleans.
When you were in the shelter in Pomona, California, did you at any point hear other kids say that they didn't know where they were going to? Yeah? And that they didn't know who they were going to live with?
Yes.
Yes? Did you hear that many times?
Yes. I've even had a little friend. I can't remember her name, but she said she didn't know where she would go.
How old was she?
Same age as me, 13.
This was something you saw happening not only with your friend, but many other children as well, right?
Yes.
And did you at any point want to go away?
I did.
And was it because you didn't like where you were?
It was because of my aunt's character, my sponsor's character. She was like, if you don't pay me for this, you're not going to get that. If you don't buy your food, you're not going to eat, and so on.
Can you elaborate a bit more about how she ran you off? Where did you go?
Well, I slept in the street. I slept in the street in the cold weather. Then I talked to a friend. I had to stay in his car with a bedsheet bearing the cold. I couldn't eat. I had no money to eat.
Do you feel you were forced to work by your aunt?
Yes. She would tell me that if I didn't have money for rent, that she would kick me out. That's when she talked to the lady who raised me, my mom. And she started telling her that she was going to take me out to the street. That if I didn't give her what she wanted, we were going to be in trouble. And to this day, she's still charging me $4,000 for my trip from Honduras. When I was in school, one of the reasons why I dropped out was because she was harassing me. She kept blackmailing me, saying that if I didn't go back to live with her, that I was never going to see my mother again.
Before we visited you, did anyone from the government ever contact you? From the shelter? Did they ever visit you?
No, never, so far. I rather think that if they would have tried to contact me, when I had no place to sleep, I would have gone.
You mentioned on the phone that you did see many things on the way up here.
Yes.
Did that involve girls about your age?
Yes, and they raped her. When I was leaving, when I was coming to Monterrey, they took us off the bus. It was like a truck. And they counted us all. I was on this side, and those two girls were here. A woman grabbed them and said she was going to take them to a whorehouse. And at that moment, a middle-aged man said, "No, I'll play with them first." He took them into the car, and we could only hear how the girls cried.
How old, if you could remember, more or less, how old did they look? About your age?
Yes, they were about the same age. One was 13 and the other 14.
Why doesn't she?
The drivers who were driving were killed.
Did the drivers get shot?
Here. First they hit them on the head with boards, and then later, when they were all beaten and their faces were covered in blood, they were shot here.
Wow.
The 3 states which have received the most alien children since 2021 are Texas, California, and Florida, with each state taking in over 10,000 per year. We were tipped off by a government insider about a suspected human trafficking case in Florida. We learned that 2 Guatemalan illegal aliens named Baltazar and Juana had requested to sponsor 13 children across 5 different addresses in Bonita Springs, Florida. Even more concerning was that these same addresses were also being used by other illegal aliens who were attempting to sponsor children. At one particular house, 4 different adults were sponsoring at least 13 children. We were told that this case had been referred to the FBI, HSI, and HHS, but after sitting on the case for months, nothing was done about it. We were able to track down a brother and sister from Guatemala who had been delivered to the trafficking ring a few years prior. They claimed that a trafficking debt has been held over their head for years, and explained the details of a labor trafficking system that targets children.
Could you please tell us your name and whether or not you have any debts?
My name is and we came here with a, how do you say, we have a debt of 10,000 in my name and 10,000 in my brother's name to Mrs. Juana. And this lady demands a lot from us. Baltazar and Juana take in a lot of children here and put them to work. Sometimes they take them in one by one, and these children come to their house and they say to them, tomorrow. What I mean is that they find a job for each one. Baltazar finds them a job, he contacts a company. Then he tells them, you will start working tomorrow. There are others to whom he says they have to find their own jobs. Because sometimes Baltazar can't find work for these children. And he tells them to wait at the stop for someone to pick them up for work.
What is the youngest child you have ever seen? What is the youngest? 5 years old, 10 years old? How old? What is the youngest child you've ever seen with Baltazar?
5 years old. I lived with them for a couple of months, but I left because I didn't like it, because they were always drinking.
So the people in charge of the 5-year-olds drank a lot?
Yes, they drank.
And the men who lived in the house, who were they? Baltazar's friends?
Yes, Baltazar's friends. They didn't live in rooms, but imagine this house, and someone says there's a room to rent here. They put the person in the living room, and that's it. There are beds here, beds there, beds everywhere.
And when Juana threatened you, did she find you, call you, or how did she do it?
Yes, she found me because she got angry when I left. She got angry when I left, so she asked me for money.
And is this lady threatening you?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of threats does she make?
She threatens, as I told you, mentioning a judge, that she's going to take something from us, that she's going to deport us.
The disastrous border policies of the Biden-Harris administration are only one dimension of the U.S. federal government's complicity in the mass trafficking of children. The entire migration pipeline, from South America up to the U.S. southern border, is controlled by networks of human traffickers who funnel tens of thousands of alien children into the United States every year. For many alien children, crossing the U.S. southern border is only the beginning of their problems. What you have seen here is a mere glimpse into the ever-growing child trafficking industry in the United States. During our 3-month investigation, we encountered numerous children who found themselves in dangerous and desperate situations after passing through the federal government's unaccompanied children program. One such child was this 15-year-old girl named Pamela, who found herself homeless in Nashville after her sponsor threw her out. When we found her, she showed signs of self-mutilation. Under the Biden-Harris administration, federal agencies and NGOs have been granted hundreds of millions of dollars to place vulnerable children in the hands of domestic trafficking networks. The only way to end this crisis is to immediately secure the U.S. southern border. The need for action has never been greater. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support our operation, you can make a one-time contribution at muckraker.com/donate, or you can buy merchandise at shop.muckraker.com. If you're unable to do that, you can support our operation by sharing the information that we publish. And if you don't want to do that, all I ask is that you have the courage to stand up and speak the truth. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Thank you very much.
11 weeks.